Hello and welcome to the Daily Lawyer. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is yet another episode in our Careers in the Law series. And today we are going to be speaking about something very unconventional, something I did not even know is possible with your law degree until I was much into my legal practice. So I'm really excited to have Tanisha Deshpande with us. Tanisha is a lawyer by qualification, and after practicing the law for a couple of years, she moved on to roles which allowed her to hone her skills to run and upscale businesses. So Tanisha is a lawyer turned entrepreneur. She enjoys a diverse portfolio of having managed business development, client management, sales, and human resources for companies such as Vahura, AZBN Partners, and LinkedIn before finally co-founding her own venture, which is the Grey Matter LLP. Currently, Tanisha consults with law firms to build and develop their businesses, marketing, culture, employee engagement, and employer brands. It's amazing, Tanisha, like you're providing services to the legal industry, so within the umbrella of the law, but still doing something so different with your legal degree. I'm really excited to talk to you today about this.
Hi, Jenna. First off, congratulations on your new venture. We've heard a few of the episodes. They sound very, very sort of resourceful, and we wish you lots and lots of luck with the Daily Lawyer.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Tanisha, before I'm really interested in knowing what you're doing and how you even thought of doing this in like 2010, 11, 12, when all of us were only thinking about this law firm and that law firm. And, I don't know how you thought of doing this at that time. But before we go there, can you start from how did you become a lawyer? Like your journey from the beginning of as a law student to here.
Sure, Jenna. So I'll keep this pretty simple. The truth is, I wanted to pursue journalism, but I wanted to be a responsible journalist. Okay. In today's times, that itself sounds like a bit of an irony. So, yeah. So I decided that I wanted to study the law because it was a great degree to have in place because the study of law was seeming very sort of inviting. So chose to study it. Unfortunately, along the way, I think the journalism dream was shelved very quickly when internships opened up at Government Law College and all my batchmates were scurrying to grab the best corporate internships at different law firms. I very quickly, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit that I very quickly, joined the rat race and decided that I needed to bag an internship myself. And then there was no looking back from there on, sort of convinced myself that, okay, this is going to be it. I'm going to finish my 5-year program and then I'm going to work at a law firm and I want to do corporate law. See, a lot of this was anyway jargon at the time, right? So we don't have as much access to information in understanding the practice of it is very different from the study of it, right? So also as law students, we have a tendency to network only with our own peers. Rarely do you go and speak to, a law graduate who's, say, alumni from your college and ask, hey, you know what, you're a first-year associate at so-and-so firm. What's that like? So we don't really expose ourselves to those conversations. We listen to a lot of what our own peers say. And that's where I was also coming from. Very quickly learned that the practice of law and the study was, distinctly apart. And I definitely wasn't enjoying the practice, in all honesty. There was this one time after, I think, close to 3 years of practicing corporate law that I realized that, hey, you know what? I couldn't care less about what the Indian government has to say about foreign direct investment into the telecom sector in India. I walked up to my then managing partner, who was a very, very kind, very, very sort of approachable gentleman, which is a little bit unlike how law firm partners can be. And I said, hey, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. And he said, sure. So let's, chat with me. Tell me what you want to do. And I said, I have no idea. But I think there was a lot of fear to walk away from the legal industry because you feel like you've spent 5 years with the study of the law, then 3 years practicing it. So I was like, I want to probably hang around in the allied space and see what offerings there are in that space. And then I can, if I feel like it, I feel confident enough, then I'll fully make a transition, away from the legal industry. That was broadly the plan. So yes, to answer your question, I began as a law student, but clearly haven't ended up doing anything in terms of the practice per se.
I really liked how you prefaced your entire answer by saying, that the study of the law and the practice of the law is very different. And also that we keep hanging around with our peers and we don't really ask anyone else in the profession. We don't really look for the sort of the practical idea of how things are. So I'm going to shamelessly plug in the reason why I started TDL, because you actually gave us such a beautiful segue that I can't not do that. So thank you for that. Yeah. So that's anyway one of the primary objectives of starting TDL also, because I also had these grand ideas. I'll become a general counsel of a global firm, and then you get there and then you're thinking, oh my goodness, what is this? Like, I can't handle this with my two kids. And okay, whatever. But Tanisha, so you said that you spoke to your partner and then he told you, yeah, you want to hang out in the allied space. And then what happened? Like, did you work a little bit for that firm to do business development and all? Like, how did it go from there to like, how did you think of doing client management and things like that?
So at the time, the firm actually had, though it was a small firm, it actually had a business development professional working there full time, which was frankly quite bold of the firm to spend that kind of money on a resource like that. And she was a friend as well, and she talked to me about Bahura, which is a niche legal recruitment firm, very much in business today also. And so then that's when I met with the founders, Ritvik and Lee, had a chat with them. I think they saw some fitment, decided that I'm going to work with them, and I took on the law school mentoring piece. So Bahura has a vertical like that where they mentor law students. They're essentially bridging the gap between corporate and college. That's what I worked on for a long time at Bahura, and then did some amount of independent and women director level hiring as well with Onboard, which is again a vertical there at Bahura. So that was my sort of exposure to the business side of law, and that was great. And it suddenly opens up so many doors, and you realize that, hey, you know what? I'm going to own this degree and I'm going to enjoy it, while I have skill set that is going to be able to fit in very beautifully in other spaces and for other work as well. So I think to move from insecurity and uncertainty to security and certainty is a long drawn process, and we have to be patient with ourselves if we want to, in that sense, seek the light at the end of that tunnel. You just have to just wait it out a little bit. So I think that is what Bahura provided a platform for. From there, I moved on to AZB for a short bit, where I did business development. My ex-colleague from Bahura, and incidentally, the founder of Grey Matter, Neha Kashyap, was heading the business development vertical, working directly with Zia and very closely with her. That was, again, an exceptional learning experience. Unfortunately, at the time, I couldn't stick around too long. I was getting married and I wanted to focus on that a little bit. And so, yes, that's when I decided to move out of AZB, but very quickly landed a job at LinkedIn. So a couple of weeks before I was actually getting married, I started my new job at LinkedIn, which was very different because it was a sales role, and we were selling LinkedIn talent solutions, which is what makes LinkedIn it's LinkedIn's bread and butter, really. And LinkedIn has a policy: they hire for attitude and not for skill. They believe that you can build skill, but attitude is something that cannot be built or taught. So I think that's how a lawyer landed up in a sales role at a legal tech company. So it's quite a story there. It was not easy, but there were a lot of learnings. The environment at LinkedIn was so conducive. Everybody was just so helpful and extremely sort of nurturing, right? While it is a hardcore sales role, so it is target driven, it is number driven. I remember having sleepless nights once when I was on vacation, waking up in the middle of the night and going, oh my God, it's Q3 and I haven't hit my number. So it was a bit of a nightmare situation, if you will. But there was so much learning in that entire exercise, right? So at the end of that stint, I decided that I wanted to come back to the legal space, because that is where there was a beautiful symphony of what I had studied and the skills I was able to offer. At the time, Neha, who I said is the founder of Grey Matter, and Shreya, she's again a founding member, were starting out. They were, both trying to freelance with law firms at the time. I was anyway doing that. I had started doing that in a similar capacity with a gaming company. That's when the three of us sort of came together and said, hey, you know what? There is clearly a gap here. There are small and mid-sized firms that require practice development, corporate communications, branding, strategy, all of that. They may not want to hire full-time resources. Can we look at working with a bunch of these firms because everyone's requirement is very different. And we're often asked, how is it that you work with different firms? Why is there no conflict? Because every firm is at a very different journey in their growth trajectory, right? So we're able to minimize and manage conflict accordingly. Also, internally, we're very careful about the Chinese walls that we need to build in place, especially when it comes to, clients. Actually, law firms are sharing a lot of confidential data with us, and we have to be extremely careful about how we manage that, even internally within the team, right? So, yeah, that's how Grey Matter was sort of founded, and there's been no looking back since the January of 2018, I'm pleased to say.
It sounds wonderful, yeah, Tanisha. And I think what you did, actually there is still a gap. I mean, you've kind of found a way to plug in the gap in the legal space, but I think there's a gap in other spaces as well, and other people are doing it. But what I really like about your answer, or what everything that you were saying, is the synergy that you found between your education and your practical experience, and also your desire, like everything that makes you feel better about working. So now
I do want to add here that it's not me so much, I mean, it's one thing to have an open mind, but it's another to network effectively for a network that then brings so many diverse perspectives. Vahura, it exposed me to some wonderful people. They like, Ritvik, the founder, he's a lawyer. He went to National Law School, Bangalore, and, there he was in a business role. Then someone like Neha, again, went to Symbiosis Pune, again, was then doing recruitment for so long, then client solutions. The people you meet along the way are actually the people that sort of instill that confidence in you. They tell you, and they show you more than tell you, that things are sort of, what you can't even, your mind can't even conceive as possible, right? So it's really very little to do with me, and I think it's a lot to do with the kindness that people, showed me along the way. And just by being who they were and doing what they were doing, sometimes you just have to watch and learn, right? So it was pretty much that.
Yeah, it's very nice of you to actually attribute that not just to you but also to the others. And this is something I'm very happy that you brought it up, because I feel like I've also learned this through life. We when we were small, not just small, but when we were in college, or the general narrative around us is like, work hard, do this, like climb up and all that. And then nobody told us how important loyalty is, how important friendships are, relationships are, when we were never taught to focus on that, even as in our corporate careers. And truly what really makes us grow or makes us pivot are all these conversations and these relationships that we have, and then they support us when we need. And nobody really talks about that, and nobody really tells. And I'm happy you said it, because it's something that I hope everybody who's listening, you focus, or it is there in the back of your mind that invest in your relationships. So lovely. Now, for anyone who's listening, because most of our listeners are law students or young lawyers, what if they are similar in the way you were, like, I'm not sure about what I'm doing in the law school, or I know I'm in a law firm but I'm not very happy and I want to pivot, or if they are not even lawyers, but let's assume that they are lawyers, how do you think your legal training has helped you in your journey? I know you're speaking to law firms, but how is your legal training helped you in this journey? That's
so
tell
I'll
us.
quickly clarify that. So I think Grey Matter works with law firms. Yes, that's sort of our niche audience, but also now legal tech companies, right? And helping them with their marketing. We also have in the past and continue to work with law schools to some extent in consulting capacity, with a bunch of individual lawyers as well, also sometimes publishing houses. So the portfolio is actually quite diverse. The aim that we sort of set out with, which is also our tagline, is to just be aggregators of change. So anywhere that we can create change, we're happy to rush to that spot and sort of create a bit of a ruckus. That's literally what we want to do. To answer the question about young professionals who are feeling very unsure about lawyering per se and may want to pivot, like you said, I think the best way to approach any a career move or a career shift is to firstly truly understand your own strengths and how you can play those into the workforce, right? So what is the workforce demanding of a particular profession, and can you match that skill set? I think that intrinsic awareness is probably step one. Thereafter, like I said earlier, you network, right? So you talk to people who are doing that kind of work to get a flavor of what that work entails. If it sometimes means that you might need to do a shorter internship or do like a part-time gig with a law firm or even with a company which is a smaller consulting outfit, or anything like that, maybe that's worth giving a shot as well. Because once you literally, like Neha says, by the process of elimination, right? So maybe you'll come up with 4 things on the list, and then you kind of start ticking them off and say, okay, maybe this, sure, works. Maybe you realize, no, these are the aspects of this sort of role that I'm not enjoying. Maybe I want to use skill B, C, and D and not A so much, right? So I think that risk-taking appetite is something that one has to build, and that has to pretty much come from within. And one very interesting place to actually visit, and I'm going to shamelessly, like you said, do some marketing here, is Grey Matter has a series called Dare Act, which we started during the pandemic. And we actually talked to lawyers who quit the profession to pursue some really outstanding interests. We have a batchmate of mine is a cricket umpire with the BCCI, and he's my batchmate. There's someone who's gone on SoFit, which is Saurabh's. It's an entire fitness sort of, what shall I say? It's become like a conglomerate in itself.
Yeah, I know Alia Bhatt is like, she was promoting SoFit, and Katrina Kaif and also. Yeah, it's become.
Yeah. So we've spoken to lawyers who've moved to do very interesting things and moved away from the practice. So I think stories like that, and the reason we started Dare Act was also this, that stories like that need to be told more often, and they need to be documented so that, people have a go-to playbook almost, if you will, right? So that was the intention. And I think apart from that, it's important that one understands that when you take on any of these management roles, they're typically called support roles at law firms, right? But they're actually management roles because they're helping a law firm manage itself, right? So essentially these management roles require for you to understand that your clients are now internal. So your internal stakeholders are actually your clients. So your law firm partners, your other teams, so if you're in HR, then maybe your practice development, your IT, all the associates at the firm, all these guys then become your clients. So you have to start treating them like that, right? And anything that they ask of you, no matter how big or small. And I think there's a tendency for us to, when we graduate, we start feeling like, I've arrived, so I'm not going to do a certain bunch of jobs that, they seem far beneath me. I think that attitude is a massive it's a recipe for disaster, literally, in roles like this, because these roles require for you to do the grunt work sometimes, and sometimes they require for you to do the larger sort of strategy pieces and so on, right? So it's really a beautiful blend, and you have to be okay with that. So I think understanding that a role like this is relatively new to a lot of people. It requires for you to, sure, set boundaries where required, but also requires you to be very open to innovation, to creativity, to change, to do the grunt work. So all of that essentially is what I would say to anyone who's looking to make a pivot into a role like this.
And how does your legal degree help you? Like, do you think that anyone who's doing what you're doing, and similar, like let's say they want to support law firms or allied professions within the law, do you think that being a lawyer is most helpful, or you think they should do other degrees like an MBA or whatever,
So look, I think being a lawyer is always helpful. I think, like I said earlier, that the base degree is a fantastic one to have and enjoy. Yes, in roles like this, it's hugely helpful because you speak the lingo, you understand the offerings, the service offerings that the law firm or a legal tech company may provide. You understand what they're trying to communicate to their audiences. So, is it a pro? Definitely, it's one extra point in the kitty. That said, some of the larger law firms do have a lot of folks who are actually from the big four, like they've moved from a PwC into a CMO role, right? So there is also that mix that is there. There are also a lot of MBA graduates who will join law firms to do the management piece. So I think that the space is hugely expanding. It is definitely at a nascent stage if we were to compare it to the West. That said, it is most certainly very welcoming of people, irrespective of what background, degree, and experience you come with, so long as they see that there is a certain hunger that you come with to better their service, very simply put, right? So I think that kind of becomes critical.
Tanisha, let's assume that you are hiring for any role within your company, or you're hiring for a client, let's say, for a role like this. Would you prefer a law graduate, or would you prefer, you don't really care? But
so, to be honest, a law graduate is definitely, yes, we're more welcoming of that. I think roles like this are definitely more welcoming. But that said, if there is someone who doesn't have a legal degree but has a very sort of strong interest in the legal sector and has a deeper level understanding of how the sector functions and follows the nuances, I think that the industry is very welcoming of such people as well.
In terms of payment, right? If a young graduate or a young lawyer, they are, we know more or less how much law firms pay, but then for them to get into a role like this, will they be taking a significant pay cut? How is the payment for this? And also, if they have a legal degree versus not having a legal degree, do they have any advantage in terms of the amount that they command in the market?
So, to be honest with you, Jenna, I don't think there's a straitjacket answer to that, unfortunately. It really depends on what the person's prior experience is, like work experience, what is the degree that they come with, or the different degrees that they may come with, and also depends on the size of the firm, depends on the budget the firm has allocated, and depends on what they're hoping that this person will do, right? So, if they're looking for a very senior resource, then you know that they will have deeper pockets for a role like this. If they're looking for a junior resource to do more operational day-to-day work, you know that the budget might shrink a little bit. So it is extremely subjective, but that said, I can assure you that we're seeing a very clear trend where even the smaller and the mid-sized firms most definitely have budgets and they have intentions to bring in place the right mix of people who are able to add value. So I think that's now set in sort of gold. Yeah.
It's actually a good answer, Tanisha, because you gave like enough pointers for people to understand where they will fit in the larger space. A good answer. So now, Tanisha, I think you've sort of answered this question, but I just want a more clear-cut answer. Who should be looking for your services?
So I think, like we covered this, right? Law firms, most definitely. Though the intent was to work with small and mid-sized firms, we have consulted with the larger firms as well on piecemeal assignments. We do a lot of work with partnerships. So when there are new partners that are welcomed into the partnership, there's a module that we now have for training new partners, helping them understand how the practice development piece is to be tackled. How do you retain clients? How do you cross-sell? So there's a massive piece there that tier one firms are sort of, enjoying. Apart from that, apart from law firms, like I said, legal tech companies, legal tech is anyway the buzzword these days. Legal tech companies are approaching us quite a bit to help them with understanding the market and then, of course, selling the product depending on who they wish to sell it to, right? So marketing around that. In addition, we work very closely with publication houses as well. We in fact have a monthly newsletter in which we're actually covering a lot of publication houses about their backstory, which is fun. Like we recently did one with Chambers and Partners. We have one upcoming with Legal 500, one with IBLJ. So it's very funny because these publishing houses will actually carry a lot of the material work that lawyers do, and exhibit that body of work. But we felt like, hey, why is no one talking to them and asking them about their backstory? So that's why we started this entire written piece with publishing houses, and we've been enjoying that. So yes, to answer your question, I think we're always open to having a chat. We're open to consulting with pretty much anyone and everyone in the legal space. Can we do all of it? No. Do we have a bandwidth issue? Yes. Is that but does that sort of stop us in any way from having conversations? Never. Because we love talking to people who are in the business of law and the allied space. So that we're always open to conversation.
Lovely. Tanisha, because you have seen the legal industry honestly from outside in, even though you're within the space, you're actually seeing the industry from outside in, and you've seen a lot of different roles within the industry. And you said yourself that things are changing today, and I agree with you that things are changing. What do you see as the role of a lawyer today?
So I think the role of a lawyer today is, and I think it's always, this holds true immaterial of which time we're talking of. I think lawyers in general are a very, very empowered, knowledgeable bunch of people, right? And I think they have access to a lot of things. And when I say access to a lot of things, I mean people, networks, abilities, resources, and money, right? So we're a very, very privileged class, if you will, in a country like India, right? And again, the lawyers you and I speak of are actually probably 2% of the larger lawyer community, right? Because this is, again, law firms and, tier 1 cities. So we're anyway a very small, marginalized sort of community. So I think what the role, when we enjoy this kind of privilege and knowledge, then becomes is to, in some way, strive to create impact, right? And not impact just for your existing client, not impact because you were paid to do a certain job, but also impact that ties into the macroeconomic sort of situation. Are you able to create any society related impact, right? So when lawyers start looking at their work from an impact standpoint, and I don't mean purely, let's now open one pro bono CSR week. No, that's not, there is far more that you can do even through your paying assignments. So there was this one firm, and I'm sure there are many such examples where, they have the ability to talk to a regulator. They can talk to SEBI or RBI about a change that they feel is necessary, present a paper on it, initiate and have that conversation, right? And then you are able to create economic impact across an entire industry, perhaps, or for a segment that will hugely benefit when that one slight tax bracket may change, right? Even a 5% drop in a particular tax structure, you're creating impact that's going to be sort of everlasting for that industry. So I think that is the kind of impact lawyers are now sort of becoming more conscious of, and we'd say they should kind of be probably more mindful of creating, because then that you're truly being an aggregator of change.
Good answer, yeah, Tanisha. Very nice. I actually agree with you. I had not thought of it this way, to be honest. But the reason also I asked you this question is because one of the things I really want to do is to break away from this stupid cliche that we are all saddled with, this Bollywood cliche that you stand in court and there are some very sincere civilians looking at you and waiting for you to fight with each other, and otherwise all this, if you argue a lot, so you should be a lawyer and all that. This is a stupid cliche that we are all saddled with, and I really loved your answer because it was so far away from this cliche that I'm really happy that you said that. Tanisha, what do you think? Because you interact with even common people. I mean, like, common people means non-lawyers. What do you think are the mistakes that we make, like everyday people make in their lives, that you think can be like plugged by just simple knowledge or simple processes?
Okay, so everyday people, I think, just in the lay people, I think the mistakes we make would be, I think there are far too many to list. But I think the one thing that one constantly learns, and we learn this actually from our clients, right? Because, and we as Grey Matter, we often acknowledge that, working with the clients that we work with, and I'm so grateful that we work with the people that we do, because there is constantly so much we learn from them, and they demand excellence of us, right? And that's actually very enjoyable, because every interaction with a client, we're going back and saying, hey, you know what, we did this well, but we can do this better, right? Or, hey, you know what, we probably don't know enough about this, and we need to go back and read about XYZ, so that we're a bit, more sort of empowered for our next interaction with this client. So I think the one thing that lay people probably, and in India especially, is that we're very low awareness about our own rights, and that's because we have very little knowledge, right? We choose not to sort of deep dive too much into what are my rights as a layperson, right? Whether it's on the you as a consumer, whether it's you as a civilian. So simple things like, I remember there was a college that I used to teach a paper called Legal and Ethics at, and simple things like an auto rickshaw cannot refuse a ride because it is technically public transport, so they cannot say no to you. How many of us know that as lay people, right? But when you read the law, then you kind of become sort of aware that, hey, you know what, this is actually a right. And that's very interesting. So as lay people, I think just the ability to empower ourselves with knowledge is a little bit missing. So maybe that's something for all of us to just focus on. And there are some very interesting channels now, on Instagram, on YouTube, some exceptional content that a lot of lawyers are putting out simply around rights as lay people. And so those are definitely worth following.
Tanisha, I'm loving how you keep giving me these segues into like marketing the Daily Lawyer. Like, this is like amazing. You're truly a marketing whiz. So yeah, yes, for everybody who is watching, Tanisha is going to mention some channels, but then those channels are Daily Lawyer. No, it's not. But yeah. Okay, and then what do you think are the gaps in the legal system as a whole? Like, I mean, there are many, but you can talk about something from your experiences. And what do you think are the gaps in the legal system?
Sure. So I think, Jenna, I will talk about the gaps, or sort of the space, primarily from a practice development gap standpoint, not so much the legal industry as a whole. So I think one gap is that law firms and lawyers have a tendency to they have a knee-jerk reaction to most things, right? So the pandemic was actually an excellent example. A lot of lawyers suddenly realized that, hey, we need a website, or hey, you know what, we don't have a LinkedIn page. All of this happened when the pandemic kicked in, and suddenly you were not meeting people in person anymore. Your only presence was virtual. And then to wake up and say, oh my God, now we need a social media strategy, or hey, you know what, we need to start talking about ourselves online. That knee-jerk reaction is a slightly foolhardy way to do any kind of practice development, right? So some long-term thought process, strategy, budgeting, I think these are important things if you're looking to set up a law firm and then run it in the long term. So that was one. I think the other is definitely, there are firms that actually have and enjoy very robust marketing, HR, IT, strategy teams, corporate communications. The problem probably is we're not doing enough with these teams, right? So they're really, really capable people. You're paying them a lot of money, but are you providing them with enough flexibility and the opportunity for innovation, right? Because if you aren't, then you're actually doing a disservice to them and to your own firm, right? So trust the resources that you've hired, and trust that they know what they're there to do, and give them that opportunity, create that space for them to actually be able to do the roles you hired them for without confining them to sort of pre-existing roles, or pre-mandated ways of doing things. Because magic actually begins when we allow people to just free flow. Like, every idea will not fly, everything is not going to be worth giving a shot, right? But at least hear them out. So in our experience, I think, as both the gray matter and having watched Zia do her business development and practice development like she does, we can tell you that spending enough time with these teams is very, very critical. And stop calling them support functions, because they are not support functions, they are management functions, and they will actually play a very, very pivotal role in being able to take your firm to sort of that final goal post that you're looking to take it to. So that would be the other. The next would probably be how seriously we take our processes at law firms, right? So there are a lot of processes that people will put in place because they must. Now, are you going to pardon somebody and let them not go through a process because there is a certain revenue that they bring in, or there's a certain designation that they enjoy? I think that's a major folly. It should be agnostic of their designation, their revenue, their relationship with you, because that is when you will be able to truly build an infrastructure that will outlive you and a firm that will outlive you. So if that's the intent, then please, as firms, take your processes seriously for sure. And lastly, I think this is changing, but we're still a bit sluggish, which is technology, right? Lawyers embracing technology. So legal tech has become a buzzword. People are definitely far more interested and intrigued by what technology is available to lawyers. Are we fully embracing that? Maybe not. Are we willing to pay full price to these legal tech companies? Maybe not. So, these are probably things to also think about, that how is legal tech going to actually not just enable us, but also help us turn profitable, right? If your business development team can save even 20 hours in a week by automating maybe your deal reporting process, why would you not invest in that kind of technology, right? If you have a software which is going to enable you to manage your client relationships better, where there's a robust CRM and everyone's mandated to populate that CRM, why would you not use that CRM? So I think just things like this around embracing technology is probably the last on this question.
Fantastic. Like, I think I should think of some other phrase other than very good answer, Tanisha, because I feel like you're, in school you're saying very good, good job. All your answers are correct. Very good. So I feel like that. But it's really nice what you said. You summed it up very well. And it's not only for law firms. I mean, what you said can apply across industries as well. But certainly for law firms, I feel you and everything that you said. So now we're going to go into the last segment of our podcast today, which is a little like fun segment, not so intellectual.
Yeah, this is, Jenna, this is completely reminding me of Unsuited. So I don't know for those listening. Unsuited was again a show that Grey Matter did with IDEX Legal, and we did it during the pandemic, and we had such a blast because we had all these legal luminaries come in, and we only talked about like their backstory. We did a rapid fire. We just had fun, and it was so refreshing. I cannot begin to explain. So we had a blast doing that.
And it was fun also. Like, I watched those episodes and all, so it was really fun. And you really learned about them because you had these mother-daughter, you had husband-wife, you had these pairs in different relations, and it was nice to see their inter-se relationship, and and some of the questions to your rapid fire were really hilarious. Yeah, it's really funny. So
I'm glad you think so. We just had fun with them, and I think it was about totally humanizing them and being like,
I know,
hey guys, they're people first, so that.
I know.
But go on. We
Yeah.
mustn't interrupt you.
So no, that's okay. So anyway, last segment, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I have 5 of something, 4 of something, 3 of something, and all that. So 5 productivity tips. And I think you're perfect to say this. Okay. Because most people are like, I don't know. So you're like, I'm sure you're going to give me 5, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So go for it.
So at the outset, I'm not particularly productive on all days. So let me just clarify that upfront. But on the days that I am, let's see what works. So I think what works is to have a very clear task list that I like to make ideally the previous day only. So that when I wake up, I'm not going like, hey, what's to be done today? Right. So I think that helps to start the day on a note where I have full sort of knowledge and control over what needs to happen today. I think blending creative and non-creative tasks is another thing I like doing. So I like to divide blending. So in a particular day, I will spend a few hours probably doing more mundane, operational work, and then I will spend some time doing my more creative work. And I think I have times allotted, so I know that early morning is a time to be sort of more creative, more relaxed. So I will do more writing work then, more content based work then. As the day progresses, I know that clients, team meetings, all of that will happen. So that is more sort of, the operational stuff kicks in there. So I think that blending helps keep stay, productive. I think reading non-work items or books or literature is again a fun way to sort of stay productive, because it brings a diverse sort of perspective. That said, I am not reading as much as I'd like to, but I'm trying, so it's something I struggle with myself. The next would actually be in a role like ours to talk to people and interact with people, and I cannot emphasize the importance of this enough, because the things conversations can expose us to are underrated. So yes, having lots and lots of conversations with clients, with your team, with your peers, with your friends who may be in the same industry, I think that's hugely helpful. And the last but definitely the most important, at least in my book, for productivity, get enough sleep. And I think to the lawyer community, this is advice that is often given and sort of the most underutilized advice. Get enough sleep, guys.
I can't agree more. Like I knew that you're going to give me like these really pointed answers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm very happy that you did. And I have to tell you, you hold the distinction of being the only guest on the Power podcast so far who has given me this sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 answers. Congratulations, Tanisha.
Winning at life. Thank you.
You're truly productive. And again, you gave me this brilliant segue into the next question. Like, you're truly a marketing guru. The next question was about reading or about books, actually. And you said you don't read enough, but I'm sure you still read. So what are the 4 books that you'd recommend anyone to read or listen to?
So I've put down a list which is more less fiction and more non-fiction, because I think fiction is very subjective. So I don't want to list out fiction. Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank is my ever favorite go-to book, because I think it is truly a testament to what the human spirit can pull off and do. But it is also such a great reminder of what ego and war can do to people. So that is my top favorite book, followed by Don't Sweat the Small Stuff by Richard Carlson, which was just, every time you read the book, you go, you literally can like start listing instances where you've been silly enough to sweat the small stuff and you shouldn't have. So I think that's a very gentle reminder. Another is Clarity and Connection by Jung Pablo. It is again a self-help book, but sort of very it really deep dives into the human mind psychology. It's got a major psychology angle as well, and it is very brief, so I really like that about the book. The last would be Tiny Beautiful Things, which is advice on love and life from Dear Sugar, which is a pen name for this author called Cheryl Straden. She's authored different instances through the book and then sort of given out advice on everything from being queer to marriage to children, just everything. It's an excellent read. So yeah, these are my top 4 books.
This is a very unusual list, Tanisha, because I haven't read 3 out of 4 books of what you've said, like, which is also unusual because most of the books that we discuss and you end up reading and all that, or you see it on the top lists and you're in there. Like Cheryl Strayed has that book called Wild, I think, but then I've never heard of this one. Or Young Pueblo, I can understand because he really writes very well and very deep, and like in 4 lines, 6 lines, 8 lines. Even when I speak, I can't do it in 4 lines. I don't know how he does it, how he writes.
And to capture that feeling so beautifully, right?
I know, like really beautiful. Okay, and then for law students, what would you advise? Like 3 tips you'd give for your law students or young lawyers?
Okay, so I don't think that I feel like I've already given a lot of tips along the way, unwarranted perhaps, but I'll stick to 3 right now. From my own learning, of course, don't be a victim of peer pressure. Try and be honest with yourself when you're assessing where you're headed in your legal career. The second would be assess your own strengths and weaknesses carefully, and then pick out a job to suit that and not the other way around. The last would be networking, if I haven't emphasized that enough, which is literally a life skill, and hone it, build it, develop it, and know that we're all just people. Our designations are a part of who we are, but they're not in entirety who we are. So don't be intimidated by people's designations. Don't worry about judgment. It's going to come anyway. So put yourselves out there, ask the questions that you need to, because that's the literally only way for us to learn.
Yeah, I liked how you said, don't worry about judgment. It's going to come anyway. Like, yeah, that's true. I don't think of it that way. I'm always thinking, oh my God, should I say this? Should I not say this? But yeah, it's a good reminder. Now, you have, I think, said this over the course of the conversation, but I still have to ask you 2 life lessons that you have learned and you'd like to pass on, like so far.
So I think the most powerful life lesson, and I struggle with applying this to my own life very often, but we have to be very careful about the narratives and the stories we tell ourselves, because literally the only person you can persuade is you, right? So that's pretty much what you have control over. So be careful about what narratives you build in your own head, because they will determine your feeling, then they will determine action. So that's one. And I think the other is when things are tough, which they sometimes can be, and things are very overwhelming, just remember to play it one day at a time. I think that is a beautiful recipe to tide over a difficult period. So literally tell yourself 24 hours more, then we'll see. 24 hours more, then we'll see. So yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of those things, right? When you're running, like if you're a runner, I've been reading a lot of running books now. Don't ask me why. And then you're like, just do one step at a time, like focus on putting one foot in front of the other. So yeah, like just one day at a time. That's useful advice. And then, because I'm speaking about advice, what is the best advice that you've ever been given?
So when I was at LinkedIn, and when sales was never easy to do at the time, there was a manager, not my manager incidentally, very nice gentleman called Satish, who now heads a very different division for APAC LinkedIn. He had a piece of advice he would always give his team, and a friend of mine was on his team who passed this on. He says, hope is a strategy. So every time that an account was about to fall off or churn, every time a sale was not going to happen, he said, it's okay, we'll figure it out. Don't lose hope. And then he'd say, because hope is a strategy. What is our strategy? It's hope. So, I found that very, I genuinely think that that's the best piece of advice I've ever heard. Like, hope is a strategy.
I don't think I've ever thought of it that way, yeah, Tanisha. Like, imagine thinking hope is a strategy. Yeah, it is, Or the other way around. Water strategy is also you're hoping that, the things come. Yeah, so it's really nice. So I think forces you to think, and I'm sure you keep remembering this at different points of your life in different situations. So amazing. It's a beautiful note for us to end this conversation. And thank you very, very, very much, because you gave very practical ideas and tips and pointers, not just for lawyers or law professionals, but for anyone, for everyone. and you helped me like 3-4 times in the conversation, do a little bit marketing and all. Amazing, like too good. Thank you.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed this conversation, Jenna, and thank you for having me
Yes.
represent the grey matter on this chat. It really means a lot. Thank you.
So you want to tell people where they can find you, like where they can find the grey matter, like what are your...
So we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram. You can check out our website. It's www.thegreymatter.co.in. We're very proud of our website. So even if you don't want our service, go see our website because we love how it's come out. So go drop us a line if you like what we do. If you don't like what we do, either way, you're welcome to come chat with us. So yeah, we're very easily accessible and searchable on social media.
Tanisha, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.